The sun hung low over the desert, casting long shadows across the vast sands. The cliffs rose like silent guardians, their jagged edges glowing in shades of orange and red. Nico, a young explorer with a notebook in hand and a small backpack on his shoulders, stepped carefully over the uneven ground. He had traveled far from the cities, drawn by stories of the mysterious desert cliffs and the rare plants that grew only there. Every step filled him with excitement, but also a quiet nervousness. The desert was beautiful, but it could be unforgiving. Nico paused to catch his breath, brushing sweat from his forehead. He looked out over the endless expanse of sand and rock. The wind whispered through the cliffs, carrying with it a strange mixture of warmth and dust. The beauty of the desert took his breath away. He had seen mountains and forests, oceans and rivers, but nothing like this. The cliffs seemed alive, their red and gold faces glowing in the fading sunlight. As Nico set down his backpack, he noticed a movement in the distance. A figure stood on a nearby ridge, watching him. She was tall and calm, with long dark hair that moved gently in the wind. Her presence was quiet but strong. Myra, a local guide who knew the desert like the back of her hand, had noticed the newcomer hours ago. Most visitors were timid, afraid of the harsh environment, but Nico walked with curiosity and care. Myra felt a spark of interest. Who was this stranger, walking boldly into the desert at dusk? The wind shifted, carrying the scent of dry sand and distant flowers. Myra took a careful step closer, wanting to see him better, but not wanting to scare him. Nico, meanwhile, was examining a formation of rocks that jutted out from the cliff. He ran his fingers along the rough surface, jotting notes in his notebook. He was so focused that he didn't notice Myra approaching. "Hello," Myra said softly, her voice almost blending with the wind. Nico jumped slightly, turning to see her standing there. "I didn't mean to startle you," she added with a small smile. Nico straightened and smiled back, a little embarrassed. "Oh, hello. I didn't hear you come," he said. "I'm Nico. I'm here to study the cliffs and the plants around them." "I'm Myra," she replied. "I guide people in this area. The desert can be dangerous if you don't know it well. You're lucky to arrive before the night. It gets very cold once the sun goes down." Nico nodded, grateful for the advice. "Thank you. I wanted to see the cliffs before the sunset. I've read about them, but I wanted to experience them myself." His eyes wandered back to the horizon, where the sun painted the sky in streaks of orange, pink, and gold. Myra followed his gaze, her expression softening. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "Many people come here looking for beauty, but few understand its power. The desert can teach you respect if you listen carefully." Nico felt a strange comfort in her words. There was something in her calm tone, in the way she moved with confidence, that made the desert feel less intimidating. "I hope I can learn from it, and maybe from you," he said, a small smile appearing on his face. The sun slipped lower, and shadows stretched long across the sand. Myra offered to help Nico set up his small camp before darkness fell. She showed him the safest spots, where the ground was stable and the wind less strong. Nico watched her work with admiration. She moved with ease and grace, familiar with every rock and dune. It was clear she belonged here, and he felt a growing respect for her. As they worked together, they exchanged small stories about their lives. Nico spoke of libraries, cities, and distant lands he had visited. Myra shared tales of the desert, its hidden caves, and the plants that survived in harsh conditions. Each story revealed a new side of them, and an unspoken bond began to form. By the time the fire was lit and the first stars appeared, the desert had grown cooler. The cliffs glowed faintly in the twilight, and the wind sang softly through the rocks. Nico and Myra sat near the fire, the warmth of the flames comforting against the evening chill. They didn't need to speak much, the shared silence felt full of understanding and curiosity. For Nico, the desert was no longer just a place to study. It was a place of mystery, beauty, and now, connection. And for Myra, the newcomer was no longer just another traveler. He was someone who noticed the desert, someone who moved with care and wonder. As the last light of day faded behind the cliffs, both of them felt the beginning of something new, something that would grow like the desert flowers, quietly, patiently, and beautifully. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, spilling golden light across the cliffs and sand. Nico woke to the soft sound of wind brushing against the rocks. He stretched and rubbed his eyes, still feeling the excitement of being in such a vast, untouched place. The fire from last night had burned low, leaving warm embers behind. Myra was already awake, moving quietly among the rocks, checking the small paths they would take today. "Good morning," Nico called softly, careful not to startle her. "Morning," Myra replied with a small smile. Her dark hair caught the sunlight, and her calm presence made Nico feel at ease. "Are you ready to explore?" Nico nodded eagerly. "Yes. I want to see the cliffs up close and maybe find some rare plants." Myra handed him a small water bottle. "Stay hydrated. The desert can trick you. You feel fine, but the sun can drain you quickly." As they began walking along a narrow path that led closer to the cliffs, the desert seemed alive with colors and sounds. Birds called from hidden ledges, and the wind carried the scent of dry earth and distant flowers. Nico stopped often to sketch rocks, plants, and formations in his notebook, asking Myra questions about the landscape. "You have a good eye for detail," Myra said. "Most visitors just take pictures or walk past. They miss what the desert is really telling them." Nico smiled, feeling encouraged. "I like to notice small things. They often tell the biggest stories." Myra's eyes sparkled with interest. She liked that he cared about the little details, the same details that kept her safe in the desert. She felt a strange warmth, realizing this stranger shared her respect for the land. They climbed higher along the cliffs, carefully stepping over loose rocks. The wind grew stronger, whipping Nico's hair across his face and tugging at his backpack. Myra stayed close, guiding him with a steady hand when paths became tricky. At one point, a small rock slide blocked their way. Nico froze, unsure how to move safely. Myra calmly held out her hand. "Trust me," she said. "Step here, and then there. Keep your weight low. You'll be fine." With Myra's guidance, Nico moved carefully, feeling his heart race but also trusting her completely. Once they reached solid ground, he exhaled with relief. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Myra smiled, a small blush on her cheeks. "The desert is full of surprises. You just need someone to show you the safest way." After hours of climbing and exploring, they found a small plateau with a breathtaking view of the desert stretching into the horizon. The sun was high now, making the sand shimmer like gold. Nico pulled out his notebook and began sketching the scene, while Myra watched silently. She loved seeing him so absorbed in his work, his eyes filled with wonder. "You really see the world differently," she said softly. "It's nice to notice the beauty that others miss." Nico looked up, meeting her gaze. I think it's easier to see it when someone shows you what to look for, he replied, smiling. The corners of Myra's lips lifted, and for a moment, a comfortable silence wrapped around them. As the sun began to descend toward the horizon, painting the sky with orange and pink, they decided to rest near a small rock formation that offered shade. Myra unpacked some dried fruits and water, sharing them with Nico. They sat close, not because they needed to, but because the proximity felt natural. "Do you come here often?" Nico asked, breaking the quiet. "Almost every week," Myra said. "I know these cliffs well. The desert teaches patience and respect. You learn to move carefully and to notice what others ignore." Nico nodded thoughtfully. "I can see why. It feels like every rock, every shadow has a story." Myra glanced at him, noticing the way his eyes lit up with curiosity and enthusiasm. There was something refreshing about his presence, a mixture of bravery and kindness. She realized she wanted to share more of the desert with him, not just its landscapes, but its secrets, its quiet wonders. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the sand, Nico and Myra began their journey back to the camp. The desert was changing colors, turning from gold to soft orange, and finally to dusky purple. The cliffs seemed to glow, their edges sharp and magnificent. Walking side by side, they felt a growing connection, a mix of trust, admiration, and something warmer, harder to define. By the time they reached the camp, the first stars were beginning to appear. Myra helped Nico gather firewood while he admired the sky above. The desert night had a calm magic, filled with quiet sounds and soft light. Sitting near the fire once more, they shared stories from their childhoods, their dreams, and their hopes for the future. Words were light, but their eyes and gestures spoke volumes. The desert night wrapped them in quiet wonder, and both Nico and Myra felt that this first day of exploration was only the beginning, not just of an adventure in the desert, but of something deeper, something growing between them like the steady warmth of a small fire. The next morning, the desert greeted Nico and Myra with a bright, warm light that made the cliffs glow in shades of gold and amber. Nico stretched and breathed deeply, feeling the dry, crisp air fill his lungs. Today, Myra had promised to take him further along the cliffs, to explore areas few outsiders ever saw. The excitement in Nico's chest made his steps quick and light. "Be careful today," Myra said as she adjusted the strap of her satchel. "Some paths are tricky, and the wind can change quickly." Nico nodded, trusting her guidance. "I'll follow your lead." They began their climb, stepping over small rocks and carefully navigating narrow ledges. The cliffs rose higher, offering breathtaking views of the desert below. From this height, the desert seemed endless, stretching in soft waves of gold and orange. Nico paused often to sketch the cliffs, taking notes about the patterns of the rocks and the plants that clung to the edges. Myra walked beside him, pointing out details that Nico might have missed. "See these marks on the rock," she said, touching a smooth line carved by wind and sand over centuries. "They tell the story of how the cliffs change with time." Nico leaned closer, fascinated. "It's amazing. Every line feels like a message from the desert itself." As they moved along the ledges, a sudden rumble made Nico's heart jump. Small rocks tumbled down from above, forming a tiny rock slide that blocked their path. He froze, unsure where to step. Myra's hand found his, steadying him. "Trust me," she said calmly. "Step here, and then there. Keep your weight low and slow. You'll be fine." Nico followed her instructions carefully. Each movement required focus, but Myra's confidence and guidance made him feel safe. When they reached solid ground, he let out a deep breath. I don't know what I would have done without you, he admitted. Myra smiled gently, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. The desert is full of surprises. You just need someone to show you the safest way. After the rock slide, they found a small plateau that overlooked the desert, bathed in bright sunlight. Nico knelt to study a group of desert plants clinging to the cliff's edge. Myra watched quietly, appreciating his curiosity and care. There was something about him, his determination, his kindness, that made her feel at ease, even in the harsh desert environment. Why do you explore? Myra asked softly. Most people wouldn't come here without reason. Nico looked up, shading his eyes from the sun. I want to understand the world. To see beauty in places most people ignore. And I like learning from people who know it better than I do, he added, glancing at Myra with a small, shy smile. She felt a warmth in her chest at his words. It was rare for someone to truly notice the desert, to respect it instead of just seeing it as a challenge. Then you're learning well, she said. And maybe teaching me a little too, about how you see the world. As the day passed, the desert seemed to test them. Sudden gusts of wind pushed against them as they climbed higher. Loose rocks made every step uncertain. Yet, with each obstacle, their teamwork strengthened. Nico began to anticipate Myra's movements, and Myra noticed his growing confidence and courage. Together, they moved as if connected, two explorers against the vastness of the desert. By late afternoon, they reached a ledge that offered a view unlike any other. The sun was beginning its descent, casting a golden glow over the cliffs and the desert beyond. Nico set up his sketchbook, capturing the moment in careful lines and colors. Myra stood beside him, the wind tugging at her clothes and hair. You've made a beautiful drawing, she said quietly, watching him work. It's nothing compared to this, Nico replied, gesturing at the desert. It feels alive, like it's trying to tell a story. Myra smiled, feeling a quiet connection she couldn't fully explain. The cliffs, the wind, and the desert seemed to mirror the growing bond between them, strong, alive, and full of energy. As the sun sank lower, they built a small fire near the edge of the cliff. The flames flickered in the soft evening light, casting warm shadows on their faces. Sitting close, they shared quiet laughter and small stories, letting the desert and the fire hold the rest of the world away. Nico felt a calm he hadn't known in cities or forests. And Myra realized that, for the first time, she wanted someone to see the desert not only through her eyes but through theirs together. As the fire crackled and the cliffs glowed at dusk, both of them felt that today had changed something that could grow like the fire itself, warm and steady, against the vastness of the desert. The desert night settled quietly over the cliffs. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted in deep shades of purple and soft pink. The fire Nico and Myra had built flickered gently, sending warm light dancing across the rocks. The desert, which had felt harsh and wide during the day, now seemed calm and full of secrets. Nico sat near the fire, sketchbook resting on his knees. His eyes kept drifting to Myra, who was arranging small stones to protect the fire from the wind. There was something peaceful about the way she moved, careful yet confident, completely at ease in this wild place. He admired her skill and calmness, wishing he could understand the desert as she did. Do you like the desert at night? Nico asked softly, trying not to disturb the quiet magic around them. Myra looked up and smiled. I do. The desert has a different voice at night. It is softer, quieter, but still full of life. You can hear things during the night that you might miss during the day. Nico nodded, looking out at the cliffs. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying faint sounds from far away, the rustle of small animals, the movement of sand over stones, and the occasional call of a distant bird. The night made the desert feel alive in ways he had never imagined. "Do you have stories about this place?" Nico asked, curiosity bright in his eyes. Myra nodded and sat down beside him. "Many," she said. "Long ago, people lived near these cliffs. They watched the stars, learned from the desert, and respected every plant and rock. There are caves with paintings that tell stories of the animals, the wind, and the sun. The cliffs have seen generations of people and the changing desert." Nico leaned closer, fascinated. "I would love to see those stories, someday." Myra smiled softly. "Maybe you will, if you return. The desert rewards patience. You learn slowly, but the lessons stay with you." For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire flicker and listening to the desert night. Nico felt a sense of calm he rarely experienced in cities or forests. The stars above were countless, twinkling like tiny flames of their own. Myra noticed the way his eyes reflected the firelight, the way his lips curved slightly in thought, and felt a warmth she could not explain. "I've always loved nights like this," Myra said quietly. "It feels like the world is holding its breath, giving you a moment to see things clearly." Nico looked at her, feeling a sudden closeness. "I think I understand now. The desert, it's not just a place. It's a teacher. And being here with someone who knows it, makes it even more special." Myra's heart skipped a beat. She was not used to sharing her feelings so openly, yet something about Nico made it natural. She looked at the cliffs, glowing faintly in the moonlight, and felt a quiet happiness. They began to talk about their lives, their dreams, and the things that had led them to this moment. Nico spoke of faraway cities and the libraries he loved, places where people lived surrounded by books and history. Myra told him about her life in the desert, about the animals she had learned to track, and the hidden water sources she knew. They shared small laughs, discovering similarities despite the differences in their worlds. As the night deepened, the wind grew cooler, and the fire's warmth became more comforting. Nico moved a little closer to Myra without thinking. She noticed, and a small smile played on her lips. Their hands brushed as they passed a water bottle back and forth. Neither pulled away, both aware of the quiet connection growing stronger with every shared glance and word. The desert around them seemed to watch silently. The cliffs, the stars, the gentle flicker of the fire all felt like witnesses to the beginning of something new. For Nico, the desert was no longer just a place to study or explore. It was a place of wonder, mystery, and connection. For Myra, the newcomer was no longer just another traveler. He was someone who appreciated the desert in the same way she did, someone whose presence felt warm and steady. Hours passed, yet neither wanted to leave the quiet of the night. Finally, Myra leaned back on her hands, looking up at the stars. Nico followed her gaze, and together they sat, side by side, letting the desert night hold them in its calm embrace. In the soft glow of the fire and the quiet beauty of the cliffs, both felt a sense of trust and closeness that was rare and precious. The desert had tested them, guided them, and now it was giving them a moment of peace, a chance to understand not only the land, but also each other. And as the fire crackled and the stars shone above, both Nico and Myra knew that this night, filled with stories, laughter, and quiet glances, would be remembered long after the desert day returned. The desert morning was bright but calm. Nico woke to the soft warmth of the sun on his face. Last night's fire had burned low, leaving a few glowing embers behind. Myra was already awake, moving quietly among the rocks, checking their small camp. She had a careful routine, one that had kept her safe in the desert for years. "Good morning," Nico called softly, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Good morning," Myra replied with a smile. "The desert is calm today. A good day for exploring, but be ready for surprises." Nico nodded, excitement shining in his eyes. "I'm ready." After a quick breakfast of dried fruits and water, they packed up the camp and began moving along a narrow canyon path that Myra knew well. The cliffs rose sharply on either side, casting long shadows over the sandy floor. Nico felt a thrill with every step. The desert had a way of making him feel alive, alert, and full of curiosity. As they climbed a small ridge, Myra suddenly stopped and raised a hand. "Watch your step here," she warned. Nico slowed immediately, noticing the loose rocks that could shift under his weight. He stepped carefully, trusting Myra's experience. "I don't know how you move so easily," Nico said, a mix of admiration and amazement in his voice. "I feel like I'm constantly afraid of slipping." Myra laughed softly. "You learn to feel the rocks and sand under your feet. The desert teaches you patience and attention. Fear is natural, but it can be controlled with care." They continued along the cliffs, discovering small plants clinging to the rocks and hidden pools of water that shimmered in the sunlight. Nico sketched eagerly, jotting notes and making careful observations. Myra watched him, noticing how his eyes lit up with every discovery. There was something pure in his curiosity, something that made the desert feel even more alive. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind swept through the canyon. Nico's balance faltered, and a small rock gave way under his foot. He stumbled, and his heart raced with fear. Myra's hand shot out instantly, catching him before he could fall. "Careful," she said, steadying him. "The cliffs can be tricky. One wrong step, and you could get hurt." Nico took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline rush through him. "Thank you," he said sincerely. I don't know what I would do without you." Myra's heart warmed. "That's why I'm here. You don't have to face the desert alone." They paused for a moment, catching their breath and letting the wind die down. Nico looked at Myra, noticing the calm confidence in her eyes and the way her presence made him feel safe. He realized how much he trusted her, not just for guidance, but in ways he had never felt before. As the day wore on, they came to a small ledge that overlooked a wide stretch of desert. The sun was high, casting golden light over the cliffs and sand below. Myra pointed out the patterns in the rocks, explaining how wind and water shaped them over centuries. Nico listened intently, feeling a growing admiration for her knowledge and experience. They decided to rest and have some water. Sitting near the edge of the ledge, Nico passed Myra a small bottle. Their hands brushed, and for a moment, neither moved away. The touch was brief, but it carried a silent understanding, a bond that had grown through shared challenges and trust. "The desert is amazing," Nico said softly, his eyes on the horizon. "It's dangerous, but beautiful. And, being here with someone who knows it, makes it feel different. Better." Myra smiled, feeling her cheeks warm. "I'm glad you feel that way. Most people only see the desert as harsh or empty. Few notice its life, its stories, or its beauty." As the sun began to lower, painting the cliffs with soft orange light, Nico and Myra decided to set up a small fire near the ledge. The flames flickered gently, and the wind carried the scent of warm sand and dry wood. They sat close, sharing small laughs, comparing sketches, and telling short stories from their lives. The fire was comforting, but the real warmth came from their growing trust and companionship. For Nico, the desert was no longer just a place to explore or study. It had become a place of wonder, learning, and connection. And for Myra, the newcomer was no longer just another traveler. He had become someone she respected, admired, and quietly cared for. As night began to fall, they watched the desert transform once again. Shadows stretched long across the cliffs, and the sky deepened to shades of violet and blue. The fire's glow reflected on their faces, and both felt a sense of calm and closeness that was rare and precious. The desert had tested them, guided them, and now it had given them a moment of peace, a moment to feel not only the land around them but also the bond they had built. And as the embers of their fire glowed softly, Nico and Myra knew that this day, with its challenges, laughter, and quiet trust, would remain with them long after they left the cliffs. The next morning, the desert was calm, the sky a soft pale blue with just a few clouds drifting lazily. Nico and Myra packed up their camp quickly, eager to explore a part of the cliffs Myra had promised he would see. This area was known for its narrow pathways and hidden caves, places only someone experienced like Myra could navigate safely. "Be careful," Myra warned, adjusting her satchel. "Some paths are tricky, and one misstep could send you slipping. But if we stay focused, it will be safe and worth seeing." Nico nodded, excitement and curiosity shining in his eyes. "I'm ready," he said. "Lead the way." They climbed along narrow ledges, their steps cautious but steady. The cliffs seemed taller today, more jagged and alive with the wind that swept across the desert. Nico marveled at the colors, the deep reds, oranges, and golds of the rock, glowing warmly under the morning sun. Myra pointed out patterns in the rock that told stories of centuries of erosion and wind. "You see these lines," she said, tracing her finger along a smooth curve. "The desert shapes everything over time. Even the strongest rock bends to patience and care." Nico studied the lines carefully. "It's amazing. It makes you think about how little we control, even when we try. But you seem to understand it completely." Myra smiled softly, feeling warmth at his words. "You learn with time. And you watch closely, like you are doing now." They continued along the path, moving carefully as loose stones shifted underfoot. Suddenly, Nico's foot slipped near the edge of a narrow ledge. His heart raced as he caught himself on a nearby rock, the wind whipping around him. Myra reacted instantly, grabbing his arm and pulling him back to safety. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with concern. Nico's heart was still racing, but he nodded. "Yes, thanks to you. That was close." Myra gave a small smile. "The desert teaches respect. One wrong move, and it reminds you quickly. But you're careful, and that's important." After the near slip, Nico felt a mix of relief and admiration for Myra. Her calm confidence, her quick reactions, and her deep knowledge of the cliffs had saved him. He realized how much he trusted her, not just for safety, but in a deeper way he had never experienced before. They finally reached a hidden cave tucked between two cliffs. The entrance was narrow, almost hidden by a natural rock arch. Myra led the way inside, where the air was cooler, and shadows created soft patterns on the walls. The cave opened up into a small chamber, with sunlight streaming in through a small crack above. It felt like a secret place, untouched and magical. Nico's eyes lit up. "This is incredible. I've never seen anything like it." Myra chuckled softly. "Few people do. That's why it's my favorite place. Quiet, safe, but alive with the desert's story. They explored the cave carefully, examining small rock formations and hidden crevices. Nico sketched excitedly, and Myra pointed out details he would have missed: tiny plants growing in the shadows, water stains marking years of slow erosion, and small fossils embedded in the rock. As the sun began to lower, casting long golden beams through the cave, they sat on a flat stone together. Nico passed Myra a water bottle, and their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. The small contact carried a silent understanding, a bond strengthened by trust, shared adventure, and admiration. I never imagined the desert could feel so alive, Nico said softly, his eyes reflecting the golden light. Myra looked at him, noticing the awe and wonder in his gaze. It is alive, she agreed. You just have to pay attention. And sometimes, it helps to have someone to explore it with. Nico smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the sun. I'm glad it's you showing me. I trust you, more than I expected. Myra's cheeks warmed slightly, and she nodded. I feel the same. You notice things others miss, and you move carefully. It's rare to find someone who sees the desert like this. As the day faded into dusk, they lit a small fire near the cave entrance. The flames flickered against the rock walls, casting warm shadows. They sat close, sharing quiet laughter, stories, and small smiles. The desert stretched endlessly beyond the cliffs, but inside this small cave, they felt safe, connected, and alive. The sun finally sank behind the cliffs, painting the sky in brilliant orange and red. The fire's glow mirrored the sunset, warm and steady. For Nico and Myra, the day had been a test of skill, courage, and trust. But it had also deepened something more: a connection that neither of them wanted to ignore. As the stars began to appear, they sat side by side, watching the desert night take over, both feeling that this moment, like the fire and the cliffs, would remain with them long after they left the desert behind. The final evening in the desert arrived quietly, carrying a soft breeze that danced across the cliffs. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in deep oranges, soft pinks, and faint purples. Nico and Myra had climbed to their favorite ledge, a spot high above the sands where the world below stretched endlessly, calm and golden in the fading light. Look at this, Nico said softly, gesturing toward the horizon. The cliffs glowed like fire, and the desert sands shimmered with every color of the sunset. I don't think I'll ever see anything more beautiful than this. Myra smiled, her eyes reflecting the fiery sky. The desert always has surprises. And moments like this, you have to notice them to understand them. They set a small fire near the edge of the cliff. The flames flickered gently, mirroring the colors of the sunset. Nico unpacked a small notebook and sketched the view, but mostly, he just watched Myra as she adjusted the stones around the fire to keep it steady. She moved with quiet care, and he admired her calm confidence, her knowledge, and the warmth she carried even in the desert wind. Thank you for showing me all of this, Nico said, his voice soft. I've learned so much, not just about the desert, but about patience, attention, and about trust. Myra looked at him, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. And I've learned about seeing the desert through your eyes, she replied. You notice things I might walk past without thinking. You remind me to see the beauty, not just survive it. The sun dipped lower, and the cliffs glowed even brighter, their edges lit with fiery light. The desert seemed alive, stretching endlessly in every direction. Nico and Myra sat close to the fire, the warmth of the flames comforting against the cool evening air. For a while, neither spoke. They watched the shadows lengthen, the colors change, and the first stars appear. The silence was peaceful, full of unspoken understanding and connection. Nico reached over, almost unconsciously, and Myra's hand brushed his. This time, they did not pull away. The touch carried a quiet promise, a recognition of the bond that had grown between them over days of shared discovery, laughter, and trust. "The desert feels different with you here," Nico said finally, his eyes on hers. "It's not just about the cliffs or the plants or the rocks. It's about sharing it with someone who understands it, someone who cares." Myra's lips curved into a gentle smile. "I feel the same," she said. "You've made the desert feel even more alive for me. And I'm glad it's you I've shared it with." The fire crackled softly, and the sky deepened into shades of purple and blue. The stars began to twinkle above, tiny sparks against the endless desert night. Nico and Myra sat together, side by side, feeling the steady warmth of the fire and the quiet strength of the desert around them. It was a perfect moment, one of trust, respect, and the beginnings of something deeper. Nico looked at the cliffs, glowing faintly in the fading light. "I don't want this moment to end," he said quietly. "Being here, with you, it feels right." Myra's hand found his again, holding it gently. "It doesn't have to end," she said. "We can carry it with us, wherever we go. The desert, the cliffs, the fire, and this feeling. All of it can stay." The sun finally sank behind the horizon, leaving a soft glow that lingered over the cliffs. The fire's light reflected on their faces, and they both felt a calm certainty. The desert had tested them, challenged them, and guided them, but it had also given them something rare, a bond built on trust, courage, and shared wonder. Nico turned to Myra, his eyes warm. "I'm glad I came here," he said. "I'm glad I met you." Myra's smile was soft but bright. "So am I," she replied. "The desert brought us together, and it has shown us something worth holding onto." As night fully settled over the cliffs, the fire burned steadily, a small circle of warmth against the cool desert air. Nico and Myra sat close, watching the stars and listening to the wind whisper through the rocks. In that quiet, magical moment, they both understood that the desert, with all its beauty and challenges, had given them more than just a journey. It had given them trust, connection, and the beginning of a love that felt steady and true. The desert night wrapped around them like a soft blanket. The fire glowed, the cliffs stood tall, and the stars shone endlessly above. For Nico and Myra, the world had narrowed to this perfect spot on the cliff, where warmth, trust, and affection met, and where the promise of tomorrow felt as bright as the fire before them. In the glow of the fire and the fading light of dusk, they knew their adventure had reached a peak, not just in exploration, but in the quiet, steady discovery of each other. And as the desert night held them close, both Nico and Myra felt that this day, this fire, and this moment on the desert cliff would remain with them forever.